So everyone, surprise, coaching leaders is different. I hope it doesn't come as a surprise to everyone. And I just want to talk about some patterns. So let's just go in. I'm not going to talk much about myself. I am a CEC, and I have been for a little while. Actually, the most important thing on this slide is the fact that I'm a collector of potato heads, a fine collector of potato heads, and my favorite potato head is in the bottom right-hand corner. That's Darth Tater. Not Vader, Tater, like in Tot for everyone. And so, but I'm not going to, and there's actually some potato heads around me in my office if you're looking. A broad definition, when I say coaching, I want to broaden the definition and talk about Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, internal, external, manager, team leader. So in the context of this coaching leaders, coaching up, if you will, the fact that it's different, I want anyone who's coaching anyone at that level, who is guiding transformations and change initiatives. So I'm not getting stuck on the letters behind one's name or anything like that. Oh, I didn't say thank you for having me. So I want to, these guys rock. The volunteers rock for the Scrum Alliance who put this on. I'm super excited to do it and just grateful to be here. So I hope you get some value out of this session. I want to talk about some coaching patterns for this, but before we do that, prime directive. And darn it, my mouse isn't working. So prime directives. So I want you to think about this in coaching up, coaching sideways, coaching down. Do no harm. Hold your coaching clients as capable, smart, having the information they need. Don't think down to them. Don't marginalize them. Even if you're thinking that way, I'm in an ORS coaching program, and I'm finding that our mindset, like how we enter a space, what's going on behind the scenes, behind our eyes, actually matters sometimes in how we show up. So be respectful when you're entering a system. Hold your client's agenda and their outcomes. It's about them. It's not about you. Help them discover the way. Very often I have a mindset that I'm a Sherpa, that I'm partnering with clients, that I'm helping them in finding their way. Have courage, be patient, actively listen, show respect, and then reveal the system to itself. So those are some prime directive things that I found really useful when we're entering the space of coaching leadership. Now I want to get into just some patterns, some thinking patterns of how to do this. So when you're entering coaching leaders, what to think about. And one of the first things I want you to do is vet your clients. And what I mean by that is an assessment, not a formal assessment necessarily, probably not, but look around, meet the client, look at organizational readiness, leadership readiness, team readiness. See if your coaching style is aligned with what the organization needs. Do you have some experience that aligns with it? Establish a coaching plan and goals with the client. But you're vetting. This is pre-coaching. This is looking at the landscape and checking the landscape. A big part of this is actually sort of deciding, am I the right coach for these folks? Sometimes you may not be the right coach. You may want to have a partner or someone else, or recommend someone else if you can. If you're an internal coach, there might be someone else on your team that you might want to recommend to come in. Another, and please don't take away this model. It's just a model that I like for coaching. But take this with a grain of salt. There's a lot of discussion around what stance do I use? And that's really what this is about. When you're coaching up, don't just coach. Adopt multiple stances. So as an Agile coach, I may temporarily take on any of these following stances. I may enter as a coach. I'm exploring the problem. I'm helping the client identify solutions. I may switch to a teacher stance where I'm teaching. I'm explaining something. I may move to a mentoring stance where I'm sharing my experience, what I've seen work and what I've seen not. I'm observing. Something that's hard for me is shutting up. If anyone who knows me, it's like hard for me to shut up sometimes. And it's like really being quiet, asking a powerful question, but then shutting up and observing what's going on in the organization. That's an important part of that assessment piece, if you will. Have that servant leader mindset where you're serving. That's one of those entry mindsets that I think is really useful uh, when you're coaching up. Model. It's not really here, but like, are we modeling? Like, are we showing the way by modeling the behavior that we're looking? Are we modeling our principles? Are we doing that? Now, this is a model that I've used that I like. There's other models. There's an X-wing model, or there's another model from I think the coaching. What Lisa Adkins had a coaching model. Uh, it's not the model; it's the fact that we need to be multifaceted. There's that silly analogy that, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You don't want to be entering. I think as a coach, we want to be flexible with our stances. Now, another thing I want to amplify is I don't think you bounce around too much. So there's a danger in going in with one tool or one stance, but there's also a danger of almost like tap dancing around in a coaching engagement, saying, oh, you know what, I have to use 8 stances, and done. I'm not done in these 15 minutes of coaching until I dance through 8 stances, and that's chaotic. And you don't want to approach that. There's something landing in the middle. I think that's valuable, but keeping that nimbleness in mind, that I'm not just stuck there. Another model that I like, I don't know where I came on this. This is from Esther Derby and Don Gray did a presentation, and I think these are the originators of it, is this 9 sort of coaching role model where it talks about just another thing is stances for me. And this is useful for me. I keep this sort of in the back of my mind. And it aligns with what I was just saying with that circle on the previous slide. There's a less prescriptive dimension, and there's a more prescriptive dimension. Those are just my words, where we're stronger or we're lighter in our touch. I very often enter. I decide where I'm going to enter. Like I usually enter an engagement with in a coach stance. But then I might move to teacher, and I might move to model. That's the role model. I'll do it, and you can watch me so you can learn from me. Let me show you. Sometimes that coaching modeling isn't even directive. It's I'm walking my talk in engaging in a client, just walking through the hallways. And so one of the things in coaching leaders is you may have a coaching meeting or a coaching session or whatever you want to call it. But I think what's even more powerful is you're coaching those leaders by how you behave outside of those walls, meaning how are you walking around? How are you showing up? The role modeling aspect I've found is very powerful from a coaching up perspective. If you're talking about, if you're coaching to trust and you're trying to help them to be more trustful or trying to create more safety, well, what are you doing? What are you personally doing? But again, it's that flexibility in our model and how we show up. It's that nimbleness that we have. Not chaotic, so not singular and not chaotic, but something balanced in the middle. One of the reminders for me in a pattern when I'm coaching up is meet them where they are. I try not to coach too far away from their current context. And that means that you have some understanding in the assessment, you gain understanding of where they are. One of my pet peeves with folks who coach leaders, and I said this I think in the overview, the abstract for this talk, is a lot of coaches, they'll sort of not meet folks where they lack empathy, and they'll just coach in the direction they think the leader needs to, and they really haven't walked in their shoes, if that makes sense to everyone. And I think there's such power, and there's a responsibility of coaches to sort of look at it from the other side. And if you can't do that, if you can't look at it through the eyes of the client, then you need to do more information gathering. You need to quietly observe more for the landscape in the transformation. Walk in their shoes a bit, and give them the truth that they can handle. right? So that truth telling, but it's not just truth telling for its own sake. It's truth telling through the lens of empathy. I remember a coach in Chicago I was talking to a few years ago, and he was talking about coaching agile leaders or coaching up, and he was doing that. He's actively doing that, and he was saying, well, they're not progressing the way I envisioned. I'm not seeing sufficient change, and there was a lot of frustration in his voice. I'm sure he didn't present that to the clients, but there was a lot of frustration, and it was affecting his strategies and his coaching style. And I was trying to say, have you ever been a leader? And it turned out that he wasn't. He had never been in a leadership role, but he was coaching up. He was coaching leaders, which is fine. But I was like, well, then you really don't know what their shoes are like. And initially he reacted very defensively. It's like, hey, no, what are you saying? I have to be a leader to coach leaders? And I'm like, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, you have no context for their world. And maybe there would be some creative way that you could do that. And we walked away and we sort of agreed to disagree, or it was a little bit tense. But later on, a week later, he sent me an email and he's like, I thought about that and I asked the leaders to shadow them. So he started shadowing some of the leaders he was coaching into board meetings, into senior leadership meetings. He asked permission for that, and they granted him that. And he went through that for a bit. And he said his response back was, it changed his view. He was solely an observer trying to look at that landscape, and he said it changed the view in my coaching. It changed the review in that empathy. It strongly increased the empathy and the approach and the strategies he was using in his coaching and how he was partnering with those leaders. And I think that's an important part of it, is meet them where they're at, not where you want them to be, not where you think they are, but actually look at it walk in their shoes for a bit through the hallways. Find out what their challenges are. They may be suffering from imposter syndrome. Figure that out. Really deeply look at it from their point of view. Another thing to consider is we all have baggage, and you want to sort of leave that at the door. I have a pattern. I think it's twofold. It's my experience as a coach. I have a fair amount of experience as a coach. It's a strength, but it's also an impediment. It's a strength in that I have all this experience. It's an impediment in that when I see patterns, I'm like, I've seen that before. I wonder if all of you have done this. I'm looking for faces for recognition. Have you gone into a client and it's like you see a pattern, and, oh, I've seen that before. I know what's wrong. I know what to suggest, right? They need to do this or they need to do that. And it's based on your infinitely wonderful experience, but you start making assumptions. And what I do when I go into clients nowadays is that literally before I go into their door or their virtual door, I'll close my eyes. I did this in a class this morning I was teaching a leadership class this morning, and I had everyone sort of close their eyes, hold up their hands, and fill their baggage with their assumptions, right? Load it up with their with their stereotypes and their assumptions and their experiences, and drop it, and then open their eyes and go in with a fresh mind, with a clean slate. Sort of emptying the cup before we fill it, if that makes sense to everyone. Really going in with that mind of a child, really going in with curiosity. So leave your baggage behind, and going in with that. And I think a lot of folks also, part of this is we stereotype leaders. I don't think Dilbert has done a good service for folks. And we really do stereotype, or maybe this is only me, it's none of you, but we have this view of leader. Almost everyone I talk to sometimes, what's your largest challenge? And they talk about leadership and they immediately roll their eyes. The other thing that happens is they immediately look up, like they're looking up at the org chart or something like that. And we don't want to, we want to leave that behind. That's part of the dropping of the baggage that you want to do when you're coaching up. I think that negatively I know that negatively influences our interactions with folks. I do think having some leadership experience helps in coaching up, whether it's pro bono leadership or if you're, leading in your churches or other nonprofits. it does help in your stories. It does help in your empathy. It does help as a, leader whisperer or in your storytelling. Uh, the other thing, but you don't have to, but you want to gain it over time. One nice way to gain it is that walkabout, right? I was talking about earlier, where you ask for an invitation to walk in their shoes. Another way to get some of that is to pair coach with someone. I'm really bullish on pair coaching. So if you're working up, if you're coaching up, and you really lack, you're a great coach, but you lack that empathy, you lack that leadership connection. Is there another coach that you can pair with to help you sort of get that perspective? Another caution on this slide is don't fake it. I've seen folks that talk about being a CEO, like I have 3 dogs in my backyard and I'm the CEO of the dog pound. And that gives me the right to coach the C level of American Express. Being the CEO of my dog pound is not the same as being the CEO of American Express. So you want to be careful about faking your leadership experience. It needs to resonate as well. And it needs to resonate with that empathy. So experience does count, but how you use it. Be cautious about how and careful about how you use it and how you gain it. And again, it's all part of that. It's all part of that empathy, the empathetic connection that we want to make. We want to be able to look at the world through their eyes. That really helps us in partnership. I don't say it here, but that's one of the things I want to emphasize. If another mental model that you want when you're coaching up or you're coaching execs or leaders is, and I do this we've done this in our ORS coaching. So I'm looking, I can see Elena. So Elena and I are looking at each other. So I'm coaching Elena visually. So instead of that, like I'm telling, or it's a face-to-face, I want to pivot with Elena and go shoulder to shoulder. And literally, I want to partner with Elena and coach. We want to coach it together. I want to establish this partnership. If we're in the same room physically, then literally I'd want to come around a desk, or I want to geographically orient myself so that we're more aligned, we're more partnered. If we're virtual, we can do the same thing. But that partnership, we're in it together. Yes, I'm coaching, and it is your agenda, but it is not adversarial. We want to move from this face-to-face posture to this posture where we're looking at the future landscape, the dreaming. Where do we want to go? What are the challenges? What are the changes? How do we evolve? How does the leader evolve? We're looking at that forward together. That's an important sort of distinction to make. I'll be crisp with our language in the Agile community can be like a dangerous thing. So, failure, self-directed, servant leader, trust but verify. That's not Agile. I mean, gosh, we should remove that from our language. I know there's no coach in the landscape, no coach that's listening to this session has ever said that's not Agile or anything. I just know that for a surety. Autonomy, pivoting, team health, trust, predictability, quality, transparency, engagement. Right? Our cup runneth over. I didn't even add safe, DAD, bless, Scrum, XP, Kanban, throughput, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, we have all of these buzzwords. When we're coaching up, be buzzword aware. Try to be a translator. Try to simplify things. Focus on a few things at a time. Try not to overwhelm. It really doesn't connect. It really doesn't. We're really a sort of a teacher or a modeler or a guide in many cases. Another thing, and again, coming back to center, these are all patterns to be thinking about when you're coaching up. Another thing is, I don't know if this is true still or not, but a lot of Agile coaches and trainers, we're very fond of games. And I'm not saying that games are bad, but I would caution you all, if we go into the C-level at a very large company, I don't know if it's going to resonate if we start whipping out games and simulations and workshops and post-it notes and Legos and other games and et cetera, and play them incessantly. We want to, again, going back to meeting them where they are. So some games can be useful. Case studies, short, instead honor their time, maybe a case study that's relatively short and targeted, maybe some short videos, some expert testimony if you have it, tongue in cheek. but a combination of that. Don't play too many games. It doesn't work really well. The other thing is don't talk academically. It's more so practical case studies. I've seen this work at companies like this, or here are some options uh, that resonates very well. One of the most important things I think, and I've talked a little bit about this so far, is and I see a lot of coaches where we're talking to someone's behavior, or we're trying to influence their growth, their self-awareness, and their behavior, and we're not doing it ourselves. I'll pick on coaches this way. WIP limits. How many of you, just raise your hand? No, I can't see you. How many people have coached any leader or organizational leader or others in an organization that they're managing excessive WIP? They have too many things in flight. They have too many things in progress. You with me? So just rate. Yeah. How many? Yeah, that's a common pattern. It's a common challenge in the world. I think most folks have too many. We're biting off too much, more than we can chew. But then when I look at the coaches, and I get snarky about this sometimes, and sometimes I poke at them and I joke, and I poke at myself, and I'm learning, on my self-improvement journey, I am limiting my WIP. But when you look at coaches, they have too much WIP in flight. Everyone with me? So if you look at the coaches, they're managing like 8,000 teams or whatever the numbers are, but then they're talking about WIP limits and the effect that has on performance and quality and on self-improvement, right, and balance, and they're not walking their talk. Well, do you think that matters? Do you think leaders are paying attention to that? And my answer is they are indeed paying attention to that. So as coaches, one of the things we have to step in, it's almost entry criteria, is we have to realize we have to walk our own talk. So before we coach others, we have to coach ourselves and really resonate with that inside out job. Are we risk taking? Are we truth telling? Are we providing radical candor when we need to for the leaders? Or are we just phoning it in? Are we extending that empathy? Are we applying our own coaching ethics? Is it visible? Are our ethics visible? Are we a living embodiment of the principles and the values that we espouse? I think many of us, and I want you to self-reflect, I think we have to do a better job in this area. And the reason is, one, for our own improvement and our alignment, but the point is folks are paying attention to that. It really is influencing those around us of how we're showing up. So it's not just our words, it's our actions. I actually think actions are so much more powerful than the words we espouse. And so it's that combination as a coach. This goes back to what I was saying. It really helps if we've walked in their shoes. When you judge someone, it says more about you, unless you really have walked a mile in their shoes. If there's a takeaway for this talk, that empathy and that walking in their shoes, and no excuses and no hubris. Oh, I was a leader 30 years ago, so I was a manager in a shop 30 years ago for an hour and a half. I know what it's like. No, I don't want that. No, figure that out today. That's part of our coaching journey. How do we walk in their shoes and be very creative with that? Bring a few models. I do think we need to bring as a coaching up, and I just list here, it's not intended to be a tool set that you have to use, but there's some useful models out there. The 9 coaching roles that I talked about, that's a useful model I use. Shuhari or Dreyfus, the skill assessments, is something that's very useful sometimes as a metaphor in helping me explain things to clients or to have some discussions. I use good to great quite often in talking about organizational challenges with leaders. 5 dysfunctions of a team is something that I probably sort of use as a reference, as a metaphor, as a training tool in coaching or in coaching conversations quite often. Crucial conversations. Cotter's change model is something that can be useful. Emotional intelligence. I'm not trying to say hit them with 8,000 models, but we should have this in our repertoire. It should be, so part of it is stance flexibility, but part of it we should have a repertoire. So stance flexibility, Part of it is empathy and some experience, and another part of it is the models we bring to the table are can be incredibly important. We're going to do some coaching conversation simulation in a little bit in chat. I'm going to try to see how that works, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that it works that it works well. But I want you to think of the simple conversation model. So think of coaching conversations now. I'm pivoting from tactics, if you will, some ideas to this move of think of an arc, think of an overarching arc of a coaching conversation. And you have opening moves. I just like chess as a metaphor. So you have opening moves, middle game, and end game. You have enter with this, explore, and then close with. So it's very simple. It's an arc of a conversation. As a coach, we can have them all the time. You enter with asking permission. You establish goals. You can have powerful questions. Listening, not only to responses but to the emotional field. So powerful listening. Then in the middle game, we're discussing, we're exploring options and strategies. We're narrowing. We're helping a client explore. Maybe brainstorming, and then in the end game, we're providing some closure. Who does what? Action plans. Maybe repeat or confirm what I heard. This is that what you meant? What do you think the next steps are? What's the priority for those things? But it's a very simple model for coaching conversations. I just want to hit you with some conversational models. One is crucial conversations. I'm not going to turn this into a training session, but I literally think you want to think about these tools for having your coaching conversations, maybe extending your stances. Again, it's coaching up is different. And I've been emphasizing some of this. The start with heart is very important. Be open-minded and empathetic. Actually explaining the intent, the opening moves of a conversation are incredibly important in establishing intent and having that positive intent, showing up with positive, maybe not even saying it, but how am I showing up? Am I showing up with that positive intent? Make it safe. Agree on mutual purpose, and these aren't in sequential order. These are sort of ideas these are sort of steps to think about in having that. Agree on a clear action plan. Separate feelings sometimes. Allow things to settle. I find very often in a coaching conversation, folks who are busy want to land it in one. It's almost a project management mindset, and I am subject to this sometimes as well. I mean, I'm getting paid on a daily rate, so I really need to coach. I need to be, sort of provide results. So if I have an hour conversation, I'm trying to overly land the arc. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to do that. Sometimes you might land half the arc and then have another conversation. Sometimes you just want to pause and allow some time, particularly if it's an emotional discussion. Hey, we can do this tomorrow. There's nothing on the project plan that says we have to land this exactly now. So we can explore this. The one thing, if you look at crucial conversations, I boiled it down to the elevator pitch, and I call it the one thing. I don't know if any of you has ever. I wish I could get data on this, but if anyone that's listening has seen the movie City Slickers with Billy Crystal, probably only 10% of the audience has actually seen that movie. If you ever watch that movie, there's a guy in the movie called Curly. And Curly is an actor called Jack Palance, who is no longer with us. And Jack talked about in the movie, he pulls his finger up and he's like, he talks about the one thing and the one thing. And it was cool. And you only found out what the one thing was at the very end of the movie. And there's the one thing in crucial conversations. And the way I like to articulate it is you're at a crossroads, and we either have it or we don't. And many folks talk themselves out of having crucial conversations. Oh, that resonates with everyone. Oh, it's not the right time. Oh, I don't have enough data. Oh, that leader is busy. Oh, they won't like this conversation. oh, my vacation is coming up, so I need to, let's do it after the vacation. Or my kids are having, my son is having a bar mitzvah. We can't do it now. So there's all this, we're at the crossroads and we find a billion and one reasons to avoid that conversation because it's crucial or because it's hard. And the one thing says, never ever do it. Have the conversation. Even if I'm underskilled, even if I'm afraid, even if I'm suffering from imposter syndrome or whatever, it's engage that. Don't defer it. Deferring it is a bad thing. Having it is much better. Even if I have a mediocre crucial conversation, that's better than avoiding it like the plague. And that's our tendency sometimes. So really, we enter into these things and we really have them. And I think that's important for coaches to have those hard conversations. It may be a hard conversation for themselves, but particularly with leaders. And again, one way to enter that is to model that, is to show how you receive it. Another conversational model that can be useful is this notion of radical candor by Kim Scott. And there's a tool here. She has a HIP tool, and it's stay humble, be helpful, be immediate in person. She talks about when to provide criticism and praise, and then don't personalize it. Talk about the behavior. So the HIP tool is another sort of conversational device that can be useful. One of the things that I talk about with radical candor is, and it's easy to give it, if that makes sense. I hope everyone resonates with this. So a lot of folks will read the book. They're like, oh, this is fantastic. I can now give radical candor. I can have these radical candorous discussions with everyone. And I talk about radical candor as, no, you can't. This is my addition. I'm like, you have to earn the right to give radical candor. And the way that you do that, you have to get a little license for it. And the way you do that is receiving radical candor. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So in order for you to have these hard discussions, you actually have to show that you can take those hard discussions and you take that feedback and you internalize that feedback and you do something positive with it. And by role modeling that and demonstrating that, then the organization feels comfortable so with you giving it out as well. It's like even-handed. So as coaches, one of the ways to sort of coach up is to be coached down, if that makes sense. Like have that, like be coached down from the point of view of how are you doing? What are some hard conversations? Give me some feedback on my transparency and walking my talk. How am I doing with that? And then whether you like it or not, take that and internalize that. See the truth in it. See the 2% truth in it, if that makes sense, and then do something with it. And now you've earned the right, does it a disservice, but you've modeled the fact that, hey, I can take it and now I'm going to fairly give it as well. And let's establish that partnership I was talking about. The final point I want to make before we play around a little bit is I want to just talk about skill versus will. I talk about crucial conversations and radical candor a lot in different workshops and to coaches and to myself. And one of the things I found, I remember I went into a company and this is for a certified agile leadership class. I talk about some of these concepts in that. And they said, oh yeah, HR has run crucial conversations and radical candor through the entire organization. And we're fully trained. We're fully trained and we're fully skilled on this. So we really don't need that. You can strike that out of the Cal workshop because you know what, we've got that. That's easy. We accomplished that 2 years ago. But when I explore the culture and the landscape, what I find is yes, they have the skill to have these crucial coaching conversations and to do empathy. They have the skills and the understanding. But the key differentiation, and it goes back to the one thing from crucial conversations, is they don't have the will. So I've come to the determination that it's not a skill gap issue. It's a will gap issue. It's an intent. It's really, it's not do I know how to do it? It's scheduling a meeting with Brock If I need to have a radical, candid conversation with, it's I have the skills to do it. But Brock argue, we all know how he is, and he scares me, and he's so tough. And is it even worth the emotional energy? And this is not true. I'm just kidding around. I'm using Brock as a foil. But is it even? It's gonna suck the very lifeblood out of me to have this conversation with Brock. Is it really worth that? And I just skip it because I have the skills to do it, but I don't have the will to do it. And I've seen so many folks that sort of don't exhibit the will. So will is the key in my view, right? The will to have these, the will to improve, the will to drop your baggage, the will to speak truth to power, the will to receive truth from power. That's the critical thing. It's skills help, but I see so many folks who are very skilled, but it's just they'll avoid these things, and maybe that's just my view, but I think it's a pattern out there. So here's what I want to experiment with, and let me get the chat up. There we go. So what I want to do with everyone is, if you remember that, I'm just messing around with my screen. Okay. So if you remember that opening moves, middle game, and end game, what I'd like to do, I have 3 scenarios, and I'd like to just see some feedback. I want everyone paying attention to the chat. We're going to get a little bit of a stream of consciousness, hopefully not from 337 people, maybe from 8, maybe from 100 of them or something. I don't care. We'll see a stream of consciousness, and we're going to talk about what would be some opening moves. And everyone should pay attention to the chat, because there's going to be a stream of ideas of tactics based on some of the things I've said and some of the things from the crowd, the wisdom of the crowd. But it's on this scenario. So I'll read this scenario. It's your key leadership sponsor pulls you aside. Is this the first one? No, this is an easier one. Okay, cool, I wanted that. I didn't think, yeah, there we go. All right, scenario. Team managers swooping in to their respective teams each time the team, encounter a critical problem. They keep taking the problem solving and accountability from the team, and you can see the morale, the ownership, the empowerment, the very soul of the teams getting sucked out of them, those poor little blokes. There is one particular manager, very senior, very experienced, very respectful, and you've tried to you've had a few coaching conversations with them before, but they simply aren't responding. And it's getting to be an increasing problem. So what to do? So you're setting up, the stage is setting up the crucial coaching conversation, coaching event with this leader, and what would be some, and we're going to talk about what are some opening moves, and not paragraphs, but a few words, sort of strategy, tactics, opening moves, then we'll go to middle game, then we'll go, how do we want to close it? So I want to see in the chat some opening moves for that scenario. Go. Want to see some ideas. What do we got out there? Figure out, love it, Michael, thank you. Slam dunk, Michael, figure out what, oh no, now it's going crazy. Opening moves, would ask them, how do they think the team is doing? Love that. Now it's getting rambunctious. Let me go back. I'm just going to, everyone scan, I'm just going to pull out some things that I like. Acknowledge the manager's intention. I love that as an opening move. Ask, how are you feeling about the retrospectives? Not bad. Meet them and ask them how they feel about the teams and transformation is going. So open-ended, there's some open-ended questions here. After that, listening to understand. I love that from John O'Leary. Listen to understand why the team is allowing Brian Stallings. I'm wondering why the team is allowing this. Amen, brother. What are you doing? What are your thoughts on this? Ask why. Okay. So there's a bunch of opening moves. What would you try to, middle game is about sort of diverging and converging, closing. What does the middle game look like, everyone? So switch to some middle game ideas. How do we start sort of conversing in this crucial coaching conversation? Reflect on, I see Azmi, reflect on how it affects the team. Why is measuring velocity valuable to you? Paula Ryan, what are you trying to accomplish? Tell me more about X. So there's a good one from my point of view. There's tell me. So now we're taking some of those opening conversations, everyone with me, and we're talking about specifics. So middle game is drilling into a little bit more of the detail. Don't be too quick to turn the team. Teach the manager to fish. I love that from Sinead. How do you think this is working? From Om Patel, share observations, not opinions. That might not be bad in the middle game. I'm observing this. Did you notice that Bob Galen broke down in tears in the parking lot, in the virtual parking lot before he came to work today? And he was a puddle of sorrow because of the swooping and the interactions that's going on. A retro on Alex Fernandez. A shout out to Alex Fernandez. A retro on the retro. I like retros on the retro. Let's talk. How long is this sustainable, Larissa? So we're talking about what are the pain points. I want to switch to how would we close this sucker? What would a good outcome be? So let's move it to the end game and close with what? What are some of the closing things? Closing ideas, closing tactics. We have a team in pain here, but I don't know. So what are some of the closing? Identifying the actions from John O'Leary, but allowing the team to say, I'll take it on. End game, closing thoughts. I'm looking. Lanny, suggest something to try. Have something. I like that, Lanny. Again, bring something specific. Like don't interrupt. I'm kidding around. Don't interrupt the team. Like go on vacation. Maybe something would be like, here are some tickets to Tahiti for a 3-week vacation. Let's see what we can get done. That was a joke, everyone. What are the key actions? How would you like us? Oh, I like Sean Evans. How would you like us to move forward? Everyone see that? The us. So I want to emphasize the partnership in some of the language here. The empathy in some of the language, I saw that. I want to also talk about some of the partnership that we can have. We're in this together. What is the way forward? What's the role? And the magical experiment word. Everyone with me, right? What can we do to run the experiment? All right. So that's one scenario. I hope you all don't mind if we do this again. Someone was kind enough to put a big bar in the chat box. I forget who that, one of the folks, the volunteers. Could you do that again? Who is that? Brock. You know what, everyone? I was marginalizing and not kind to Brock. And did you notice he's a servant leader and he's just stepping up and he's helping me out, and I appreciate that. Even when I was disrespectful, I mean, I'm just like, I'm blown away. Servant leadership. So swooping, we're moving to disappointed. Here's the next scenario. Your key leadership sponsor pulls you aside. Everyone, settle. Don't type. Come on. Don't jump in. Let me read it, and then we'll finish this. This one pulls you aside and tells you that they are a little unsettled with your coaching style, and more importantly, the lack of your results. She explains that of the 20 plus teams in the organization, only 3 have that you're coaching. Only 3 have consistent increasing velocity. These same 3 teams seem to be working the hardest as well. I love it. She loves it. She's challenging you that you only have 2 to 3 more sprints to get the remaining 15 plus teams up to speed with the other teams, or else they'll have to find a coach who can drive the results they are after. Maybe not quite that strong of a threat, but a hanging threat a little bit. So now what I want to do is the same thing. That's the scenario. There's a crucial coaching conversation. And again, this could be different stances, etc., different entry points, different the one thing, different radical candor. But I want to follow this arc. This is an arc that we've established. We've scheduled some time. So what would some opening moves be in this? I'm looking for scenario 2, some open moves. Oh, you rock Brock. There are Brock fans in the audience. Cool. What is important about velocity for you? Amelia, love that. Enter that. No, I don't have to paraphrase the complaint. What is valuable about increasing velocity to you? So there's generally exploration there a little bit, some understanding. What does velocity? Anything else around it? Leader candid feedback. Fist. Let me hear more of your concerns. Is it a suggestion? What do you value here? What is the value you're looking for? What is the value that's missing? So I'm seeing some of that. What measures of success from Joe? Dan Eberly, thank them for telling me this. Let's talk more. I want to, Dan, so Dan Eberly, thank them for telling me this. Let's talk more. I might even want to buy some time for this. This is for me, again, I might have the conversation. I might just do some exploration in this conversation. So opening moves, middle game, end game might be just data finding, fact finding, perception finding for a follow-up coaching conversation. I'm seeing some of that here. What does middle game look like? Can we go, oh, Brian Stallings, can we go get a drink? Yes. Can we, and all, I don't know if Brian is serious or half serious, but getting out of the building sometimes, go for coffee. I'm not talking about getting toasted at the local bar. I am talking about sort of getting out of the space might be a successful thing here. Thank you for, so what else do we have here? All right, we need to go into middle game, everyone. I want to see some middle game stuff. I can do better, provide you visibility. So there's what am I doing? Do you lack visibility? There might be a gap here, an information gap. The teams may be succeeding. Protect team velocity. Are they in the middle game? Everyone, is there a teaching moment here? Could we go to mentoring and teaching? I want to see some comments. So could we talk about the value of velocity and the lack of value of velocity? Maybe we want to pivot. Maybe we want to pivot from just measuring output to talking about outcomes or something. I might see something like that in the middle game. Everyone with me? I might move from coaching stance to teaching stance. And then I might move to or mentoring stance and then reframing things. So from discovery, focus on value, not velocity. I'm seeing that. If we are to do this better, what would you think we go about it? I want to get a reaction. Would anyone, is there a really prescriptive, give me a prescriptive reaction to this. I mean, my reaction to this, I might say something like, and I'm doing this off the cuff, but I don't know. I think we're measuring the wrong things, and the number of teams is I can't coach this many teams in 3 weeks. So your expectations of team maturity and team growth and measurement are totally out of aligned with what our agreements were in the beginning. Can we explore that? So talk about things like that. Now I'm seeing metrics does not say at all, bad idea to compare teams. There might be some sort of crucial conversation or radical candor or speaking truth to power that we want to get to. I want to look at the time. Let's get to the last one. Everyone, you guys rock. You guys rock. And I hope everyone is paying attention to this rich chat box and keeping it. Please, I would encourage you to keep it at the end of the talk. I have one more for you. One more. It's how committed are you? In the last sprint demo, several teams demonstrated quite successful results. However, they failed to deliver everything. Damn them. Senior leaders in the audience seemed to latch on to the missed stories and began to berate the teams. In the meeting, in the review, questioning their intent, their efforts, their ethics, their professionalism. It was ugly. You could see the little heads of the team just falling down, oxygen leaving the room. This is a real-time situation. So what I want, and you're a coach in the room, in whatever role you are, and you see this, and you do have some responsibility in coaching up. What does opening moves look like? And it could be in the meeting, or it could be talk to them later. I want to see some opening moves. Did Brock put, oh, thank you, Brock. So open, celebrate the small successes. Bring cake, yes, or brownies, or anything else. Depending, it's very sort of culturally dependent. But bring something. Give the mic to the PO. Amplify the good. We failed at facilitation already if we allowed this to happen. Brian Stallings is just knocking some thoughts out of the park. I like what Brian's coming into play. Although everyone is a winner here, I'm not judging, so there is no judgment on the chat. Let's meet to discuss. So Gene Gregory is talking about maybe taking it offline. I see from Rohit, like, take a break. Maybe we need to break. I've actually been in this situation as a leader slash coach, and I sort of took a time out and I went into mentoring mode, or explaining that this is not the time. The review is, this is not the place or time to berate the team, to call the team's sort of personal characteristics into question. This is really looking at what they've produced. So you could reframe things that way. How about middle game, end game? Let's switch to that. I'm watching the time. I'm almost out of time. Can we talk about what happened in the review? It looks like you had a few struggles this sprint. The anti-patterns. Save the criticism for later in the conversation. Celebrate. I like that. Teddy Carroll. Nicely played. Highlight failing forward. There is that notion of failing. I love that language of let's fail forward. I might not even call this a failure, right? It might go down to the goals. They accomplish their goals. It's not about, 0.001 clarity around velocity or points. It's around hitting the sprinkles. The PO might come in. This is something that would take, there's a real-time nature here, and there's a take it offline nature here. There's a choice to be made. Everyone with me? I think you can see that. I have 38 seconds left, so enough of that. I just want to say in 29 seconds, I'm kidding around a lot. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I do think coaching leaders and coaching up is different. It's the same and different. I wanted to change some of your thinking about how to do that and give you some ideas and a little bit of practice. I really want to thank everyone for the wonderful chat. All right. I have some giveaways here. You can get the slides later, some free books, and I am done.